At number 2, I have on route. So this is almost a flip and right style game. It's a route building game where you're trying to get these tourists of different colours to visit certain landmarks on these famous, maps of famous world places. You've got London and Paris and New York, all the big hitters, and you're doing that through this really interesting drafting system where you can use a card from your hand, and then each of your neighbours also gives you a card that you can choose from. So you have to use your own, but then you can select one of your neighbours. And those cards are going to show you 2 coordinates, which are going to show your starting point, or where you're going to plot these different tourists onto your map. And then from that point, you can then draw a route, basically going from edge to edge of these different squares. So you can draw 2 lines if you are touching the square that you've just plotted, or you can draw 1 line anywhere. And as I said, you are trying to get your blue tourist to visit all the blue locations. You're trying to get the red tourist to visit the red locations. But there are some other things you need to consider as well. In fact, a lot of other things pulling you in different directions. So first off, you have yellow locations that will give you just pure points. You have public objectives that you're trying to race for, or not trying to race for, but you're trying to win in the different categories. So it might say things like, well, what's your biggest loop on your route? Or how many turns do you take on your route? And there's even map-specific endgame objectives, like, for example, on the London map, it might say, how many times do you walk across the River Thames? And so on. On top of that, you have your own personal player objective where you want to hit certain checkpoints on your map as well. And on top of that, there are famous landmarks on the map which will kind of increase the yield of points as the game progresses if certain cards are drafted. So for example, again, if someone keeps visiting the Tower of London, then those points are going to go up and up and up, which might try and force or maybe prompt the other players to make sure that their route goes past the Tower of London. Now, once you've done your 10 rounds, this is my favourite part of the game actually, you are going to plot your final route. So you can only ever have one route with a start point and an end point, and any kind of side routes or little diversions you've taken will have to get rubbed off the board, meaning that all that effort was completely wasted. And as you can imagine, your ideas and what your strategy was might change as those coordinates are coming out throughout the game. So you do need to be prepared to pivot here and be prepared to sometimes just forsake some of your scoring for better scoring. There's also some really cool little twists in this game. Like, for example, you can use subways, so your route can go into a subway, then come out of another one, and so on. So they've definitely thought of everything here. And for a standard flip and right style game, this one's pretty intense. There's a lot going on here, more than your average one. But I think by a game or two, you start to really appreciate the amount of different things you can go for, because you're not pigeonholed to do a certain thing. You can dip your toes into all the different scoring categories, or you can really try and tunnel vision on doing something in particular. The variety is fantastic. You can play with a really basic introductory map. Again, you've got your London, you've got your Paris, you've got this huge New York map which uses all the different special rules. And this game kind of is a one-stop shop for all of those route building mechanisms that I kind of love. I really love route building games. This one does a really good job of, again, adding so many different elements into the game without feeling overwhelming. I think at first it can feel a little bit fiddly and a little bit clunky. But once you go through a few rounds, you understand how that drafting system works. You understand how the plotting system works and the final route system. It actually does a really good job of creating its little niche in the hobby space for me. So I'm thoroughly enjoying this one at the moment. I'm excited to dig into more of those maps and see what they have to offer, those extra little bells and whistles of those different maps. And it's just a really nice game. And I like the little bit of embedded player interaction through that drafting system. When it's your turn, your neighbouring players have a vested interest in what you're doing, because you're going to play your card down. Then they might think, I love that 3, but I want to be on plot 3 too, so I'm going to give my 2 card. But do I want to risk giving my 2 card because my opponent on the other side might give a better card, and therefore I've wasted my 2 card and it's not going to get selected and I've thrown it away. So I really like those little little niches in this game that make it more interesting. So, and it also doesn't outstay its welcome. It's only around 40 minutes to play. It's scaled well because everyone's invested at all times. And yeah, it's just a thoroughly enjoyable experience. So that is En Route at number 2.